Dear students, Namaskar. I hope that you all must be in sound health and must be continuing your studies regularly. Today, we are going to discuss Chapter 7 of Class 9 Science, Diversity in Living Organisms. Before starting with the chapter, let us recall what we already know. What are living organisms? Do all living organisms look alike? Now we shall see what we are going to learn today. Importance of classification, basis of classification, classification and evolution, the hierarchy of classification groups, five kingdom classification, Plantae, Animalia, nomenclature. Children, let us begin with importance of classification. Consider yourself and a friend. Are you both of the same height? Does your nose look exactly like your friend's nose? Is your hand span the same as your friend's? However, if we were to compare ourselves and our friends with a monkey, what would we say? Obviously, we and our friends have a lot in common when we compare ourselves with a monkey. Now think of all the different forms in which life occurs on Earth. On one hand, we have microscopic bacteria of a few micrometer in size, while on the other hand, we have blue whale and redwood trees of California of approximate sizes of 30 meters and 100 meters respectively. Some pine trees live for thousands of years, while insects like mosquitoes die within a few days. This bewildering variety of life around us has evolved on the earth over millions of years. However, we do not have more than a tiny fraction of this time to try and understand all these living organisms. So, we cannot look at them one by one. Instead, we look for similarities among the organisms which will allow us to put them into different classes and then study different classes or groups as a whole. In order to make relevant groups to study the variety of life forms, we need to decide which characteristics decide more fundamental differences among organisms. This would create the main broad groups of organisms. Within these groups, smaller subgroups will be decided by less important characteristics. Greek thinker Aristotle classified animals according to whether they lived on land, in water or in air. For example, animals that live in the sea include corals, whales, octopuses, starfish and sharks. We can immediately see that these are very different from each other in numerous ways. In fact, habitat is the only point they share in common. We therefore need to decide which characteristics to be used as the basis for making the broadest divisions. Then we will have to pick the next set of characteristics for making subgroups within these divisions. Before we go on, we need to think about what is meant by characteristics. What we mean by a characteristic is a particular feature or a particular function. That most of us have 5 fingers on each hand is thus a characteristic. That we can run but the banyan tree cannot is also a characteristic. Now to understand how some characteristics are decided as being more fundamental than others, let us consider how a stone wall is built. The stones used will have different shapes and sizes. The stones at the top of the wall would not influence the choice of stones that come below them. On the other hand, the shapes and sizes of the stones in the lowermost layer will decide the shape and size of the next layer, and so on. Nowadays, we look at many interrelated characteristics starting from the nature of the cell in order to classify all organisms. Some basic characteristics used for a hierarchical classification of organisms are as follows: cell structure, modes and source of nutrition, structure and organization of body. On the basis of these characteristics only, plants and animals are categorized into separate groups. Classification and evolution. Most life forms that we see today have arisen by an accumulation of changes in the body design that allow the organism possessing them to survive better. Charles Darwin first described this idea of evolution in 1859 in his book The Origin of Species. When we connect this idea of evolution to classification, we will find some groups of organisms which have ancient body designs that have not changed very much. We will also find other groups of organisms that have acquired their particular body designs relatively recently. Those in the first group are frequently termed as primitive or lower organisms, while those in the second group are called advanced or higher organisms. The hierarchy of classification groups and five-kingdom classification. Biologists such as Ernst Haeckel, Robert Whittaker and Carl Woese have tried to classify all living organisms into broad categories called kingdoms. The classification Whittaker proposed has 5 kingdoms: Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia, and is widely used. These groups are formed on the basis of their cell structure, mode and source of nutrition, and body organization. The important characteristics of the 5 kingdoms of Whittaker are as follows. The first kingdom is Kingdom Monera. They are prokaryotic organisms. These organisms do not have a defined nucleus or organelles. They show unicellular body designs. This group includes bacteria, blue-green algae or cyanobacteria and mycoplasma. The next kingdom is Kingdom Protista. They are microscopic. This group includes many kinds of unicellular eukaryotic organisms, that is, they have well-defined nucleus and nuclear membrane. Examples are unicellular algae, diatoms, protozoans like amoeba and paramecium. Our next kingdom is Kingdom Fungi. These are heterotrophic eukaryotic organisms. Many of them are multicellular organisms, but some may be unicellular like yeast. They have cell walls made of a tough complex sugar called chitin. Examples are yeasts, molds and mushrooms. Some fungal species live in permanent mutually dependent relationships with blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. Such relationships are called symbiotic. These symbiotic life forms are called lichens. We have all seen lichens as the slow-growing, large-colored patches on the bark of trees. Our next kingdom is Kingdom Plantae. These are multicellular eukaryotic with cell walls. They are autotrophs and use chlorophyll for photosynthesis. Thus, all plants are included in this group. Our next kingdom is kingdom Animalia. These include all organisms which are multicellular eukaryotes without cell walls. They are heterotrophs. Children, let us now learn about kingdom Plantae in detail. The first level of classification among plants depends on whether the plant body has well differentiated distinct parts. The next level of classification is based on whether the differentiated plant body has special tissues for the transport of water and other substances. Further classification looks at the ability to bear seeds and whether the seeds are enclosed within fruits. The first division in Plantae is Thallophyta. Plants that do not have well differentiated body design fall into this group. The plants in this group are commonly called algae. These plants are predominantly aquatic. Examples are Spirogyra, Eulothrix and Cladophora. The second division in Plantae kingdom is Bryophyta. These are called the amphibians of the plant kingdom. The plant body is commonly differentiated to form stem and leaf-like structures. However, there is no specialized tissue for the conduction of water and other substances from one part of the body to another. Examples are moss and Marchantia. Pteridophyta. In this group, the plant body is differentiated into roots, stem and leaves. They have specialized tissue for the conduction of water and other substances from one part of the plant body to another. Some examples are Marsilia, ferns and horsetails. Plant kingdom is divided into two categories, cryptogams and phanerogams. The basis of this categorization is whether the reproductive organs are hidden or there are well differentiated reproductive parts. The plants which have inconspicuous and hidden reproductive organs and do not produce seeds are called cryptogams. Thallophyta, Bryophyta and Pteridophyta are cryptogams. On the other hand, plants with well differentiated reproductive parts that ultimately make seeds are called phanerogams. This group is further classified based on whether the seeds are naked or enclosed in fruits, giving us two groups, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms. The plants of this group bear naked seeds and are usually perennial, evergreen and woody. Examples are pines, devdar, pinus and cycas. Angiosperms. If the seed develops in a fruit or hidden inside a fruit, then they are called angiosperms. The seeds develop inside an ovary which is modified to become a fruit. These are also called flowering plants. Plant embryos in seeds have structures called cotyledons. Cotyledons are also called seed leaves. The angiosperms are divided into two groups on the basis of the number of cotyledons present in the seed. Plants with seeds having a single cotyledon are called monocotyledonous or monocots. Plants with seeds having two cotyledons are called dicots. Paphiopedilum is the example of a monocot and Ipomia is the example of a dicot. Apart from this, the difference between monocots and dicots can also be understood by maize and chickpea. Animalia. The organisms in this group have following features: eukaryotic, multicellular and heterotrophic. Their cells do not have cell walls. Most animals are mobile. They are further classified into 10 groups based on the extent and type of the body design differentiation found. So, first phylum in kingdom Animalia is Porifera. The word Porifera means organisms with holes. These are non-motile animals attached to some solid support. There are holes or pores all over the body. These lead to a canal system that helps in circulating water throughout the body to bring in food and oxygen. These animals are covered with a hard outside layer of skeleton. The body design involves very minimal differentiation and division into tissues. They are commonly called sponges. Cycon, Euplactella and Spongilla are few examples. Our next phylum is Coelenterata, also called Cnidaria. These are animals living in water. They show more body design differentiation. There is a cavity in the body. The body is made of two layers of cells. One makes up cells on the outside of the body and the other makes the inner lining of the body. Some of these species live in colonies like corals, while others have a solitary lifespan like hydra. Jellyfish and sea anemones are common examples. Platyhelminthes. The body of animals in this group is far more complexly designed. The body is bilaterally symmetrical, meaning that the left and the right halves of the body have the same design. There are 3 layers of the cells from which differentiated tissues can be made, which is why such animals are called triploblastic. The body is flattened dorsoventrally, meaning from top to bottom. Some common examples are liver flukes. Nematoda. The nematode body is also bilaterally symmetrical and triploblastic. However, the body is cylindrical rather than flattened. There are tissues but no real organs, although a sort of body cavity or a pseudocoelom is present. Worms causing elephantiasis or the worms in the intestine are some common examples. Annelida. Annelid animals are also bilaterally symmetrical and triploblastic. They have a true body cavity. This allows true organs to be packaged in the body structure. There is thus extensive organ differentiation. Some common examples are earthworms and leeches. Our next phylum is Arthropoda. This is probably the largest group of animals. These animals are bilaterally symmetrical and segmented. There is an open circulatory system. They have jointed legs. Some familiar examples are prawns, butterflies, houseflies, spiders, scorpions and crabs. Mollusca. In the animals of this group, there is bilateral symmetry. The coelomic cavity is reduced. There is little segmentation. They have an open circulatory system and kidney-like organs for excretion. There is a foot that is used for moving around. Examples are snails and mussels. Echinodermata. These are spiny-skinned organisms. They are triploblastic and have a coelomic cavity. They also have a peculiar water-driven tube system that they use for moving around. They have hard, calcium carbonate structures that they use as a skeleton. Examples are starfish and sea urchins. Our next phylum is Protochordata. These animals are bilaterally symmetrical, triploblastic and have a coelom. They show a new feature of body design, namely a notochord, at least at some stages during their lives. It provides a place for muscles to attach for ease of movement. Examples are Balanoglossus, Herdmania and Amphioxus. Vertebrata. These animals have a true vertebral column and internal skeleton. Vertebrates are bilaterally symmetrical, triploblastic, coelomate and segmented with complex differentiation of body tissues and organs. All chordates possess the following features. They have a notochord, they have a dorsal nerve cord, are triploblastic, have paired gill pouches and are coelomate. Vertebrates are grouped into 5 classes. The first class is Pisces. These are fish. They are exclusively aquatic animals. Their skin is covered with scales or plates. They are cold-blooded and their hearts have only 2 chambers, unlike the 4 that humans have. We can think of many kinds of fish, some with skeletons made entirely of cartilage such as sharks and some with a skeleton made of both bone and cartilage such as tuna or rohu. Our next class is amphibia. These animals differ from fish in the lack of scales. They have a 3-chambered heart. Respiration is through either gills or lungs. They lay eggs. Frogs, toads and salamanders are some examples. Reptilia. These animals are cold-blooded. They breathe through lungs. While most of them have a 3-chambered heart, crocodiles have 4 heart chambers. They lay eggs with tough coverings. Snakes, turtles, lizards and crocodiles fall in this category. Aves. These are warm-blooded animals. They have a 4-chambered heart. 2 forelimbs are modified for flight. They breathe through lungs. All birds fall in this category. Pigeon, sparrow, crow and ostrich are few examples. Mammalia. Mammals are warm-blooded animals. They have 4-chambered hearts. They have mammary glands for the production of milk to nourish their young ones. Their skin has hair as well as sweat and oil glands. Most mammals familiar to us provide live young ones. However, a few of them, like the platypus and the echidna, lay eggs. Cat, human, rat, bat and whale are some examples. Nomenclature. The system of scientific naming or nomenclature we use today was introduced by Carolus Linnaeus in the 18th century. The scientific name of an organism is the result of the process of classification. We write the name of the genus and species of that particular organism. World over, it has been agreed that both these names will be used in Latin forms. Certain conventions are followed while writing the scientific names. The name of the genus begins with a capital letter. The name of the species begins with a small letter. When printed, the scientific name is given in italics. When written by hand, the genus name and the species name have to be underlined separately. For example, the scientific name of human beings is Homo sapiens, in which Homo is the genus and sapiens is the species. Recapitulation. For classification of organisms, common characteristics are considered. Characteristic means a particular feature or a particular function. The classification of life forms is related to their evolution. Robert Whittaker gave 5-kingdom classification of organisms. The binomial nomenclature is made up of 2 words, a generic name and a specific name. Children, now I will ask you a few questions and I hope that you might be knowing the answers. My first question is, Plantae kingdom is divided into dash divisions. So, what are the divisions of the Plantae kingdom? They are Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnosperms and Angiosperms. My next question, there are total dash phylum in animal kingdom. And the right answer is 10. My next question, in binomial nomenclature, first name is of dash and the second name is of dash. So, what is the right answer? In binomial nomenclature, the first name is of genus and the second name is of species. With this, we complete our chapter and I hope that you all must have listened to the chapter carefully and understood it well. Children, keep learning, keep growing, stay home and stay safe. Thank you.